Time now for business. We cross to the World Economic Forum in Davos, 50th edition, with political leaders and business executives making that annual pilgrimage to the Swiss Alps. We'll be hearing from Donald Trump on Tuesday. Our business editor, Stephen Carroll, is live from Davos. Stephen, let's start with the forecast, the IMF's forecast.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a slightly gloomier picture for the global economy to open this 50th World Economic Forum. They've downgraded their forecast for global growth for this year to 3.3%. Now, that's still better than 2019, but 2019 was the worst year for global growth since the financial crisis. So somewhat gloomy outlook from the IMF there. One of the interesting ideas, because there are lots of reports published on the first day of Davos, one of them coming from the World Economic Forum themselves, one of the ideas that could boost global growth would be policies that would improve social mobility. That's according to their research that they've published. But they said that of a survey of 80-something countries on this issue, they found only a handful had actually done anything to promote social mobility. But that's one idea being put forward by the forum as this discussion gets underway, this annual gathering of political and business leaders. One of the other fixtures of the first day of Davos too is the report on inequality from Oxfam. It's as shocking as it is every year. This year, Oxfam highlighting that the wealth held by the world's billionaires, that's around 2,100 people, is the equivalent to the wealth that's held by 4.6 billion. So pretty shocking figures on inequality to set up the stage for Davos this year. There's a special focus in the report this year on the work done, the unpaid work done in the home, mainly by women, and how that's contributed to inequality on a gender basis, as well as inequality across the board in wealth terms as well. I've been speaking to the CEO of Oxfam India, Amitbar Bayar, about the details of their report.
What's making it worse is the rigged economic system. It's a system which is tilted in favor of the super rich, and it is also part of crony capitalism, where you're ensuring that the policies are in favor of the rich, which is going to make the rich people richer at the expense of poor, ordinary citizens, women and girls, and planet Earth. So that's what we're looking at.
One of the issues you've highlighted in this year's report is how women's work is largely unpaid, and that's skewing these figures even more unfairly against women.
Absolutely. If you look at the unpaid care work of women, it would amount to $10.8 trillion a year. That's 3 times the global tech industry. And when we talk of unpaid care work, we're essentially talking about women taking care of children, the elderly, the sick, the disabled. We cannot continue with a rich system in favor of the super rich and in favor of men.
Why do you come with this report to Davos? As you say, these are the super rich that are here. Do you believe they're listening to these figures? Do you think it worries them?
I hope they're listening. They have to listen. Just look around what's happening in the world. At least in 30 countries at the moment, you're seeing street protests. People are out on the streets demanding a more fair, just system. They are saying, do we really need billionaires? I think that's a critical question to ask. And if they don't listen, this is not going to work. But our appeal is not only to the billionaires. We want them not to do any harm, but it is also to the governments. I think the decisive action needs to come from the governments. They need to ensure that everybody pays their due share of taxes. It's also important, particularly in the context of care economy, that governments spend in building the social infrastructure, taking childcare, ensuring public health, ensuring public education. That's the kind of investments that the government needs to make. And also ensuring that everybody gets a living wage.
What about taxation? Is wealth tax something that countries should be doing?
Absolutely. I think what we need is taxes and more taxes. At the moment, if you really look at it, wealth tax is just around 4% of the global taxing system. So there's huge need and requirement for enhancing the wealth tax, inheritance tax, estate duties, and so on. So that's very, very critical. I think we need to also see even an entity like IMF now is saying we need more taxes. And just to remind us what Warren Buffett said famously, it's an unfair system where I pay less taxes than my secretary.
Amitabh Bayar there speaking to me from Oxfam. He's the CEO of Oxfam India about their inequalities report. The main highlight of this year's Davos is expected to be that speech by Donald Trump. That's happening on Tuesday, of course, the same day that the impeachment proceedings are getting underway in Washington. We'll be expecting to hear from the president, perhaps a message along the lines of what he told business leaders here in 2018 about America first, not being America alone. Of course, those business leaders now have a much better idea of what a Trump administration will mean for their businesses, particularly in the wake of the Phase 1 trade agreement signed with China. We'll also hear from the Chinese Vice Premier tomorrow. One encounter which we're not sure is going to happen, but we'll be watching very closely to see that if it does. The climate activist Greta Thunberg is speaking tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon, sort of bookending the time when Donald Trump is speaking, and we'll be looking out to see if those two might pass each other in the corridors in Davos. No meetings scheduled as far as we know, but we'll be watching closely to see if they happen to rub shoulders in the Congress Centre here at the World Economic Forum on Tuesday.
Stephen Carroll reporting live from Davos, and we'll be checking back in with you later on throughout the rest of this Monday. First,